Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is our Intro to Dev Mode webinar, where we are going to show you how Dev Mode is driving impact for product teams by streamlining the flow from design to development. My name is Megan Ollinger. I'm a member of Figma's onboarding team. It's a pleasure to be here with you to chat about all things Dev Mode today. I am also joined behind the scenes by a couple of friends here at Figma. I have Ellie Lasatz, Danielle Reardon, and Tatiana Mojica, who will be assisting me with both our chat and our Q&A today. All three are absolute pros and work with some of our biggest customers. So thank you for being here, everyone. Excited we have your expertise on the line. Here is a quick look at what you can expect during today's webinar. Whether you are new to Dev Mode or you are a current customer who is, just getting started rolling out these features, you are in the right place today. And I hope you'll leave here with a little bit something for everyone. We are going to start with a brief overview of Figma today, and then do an introduction to Dev Mode specifically. After that, we're going to head straight into a live demo to really show you how Dev Mode works in action and helps your teams with handoff, design inspection, developer efficiency, and more. Finally, we will wrap up with some time for live Q&A. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we begin. First, if you have general comments about the webinar or things you want to chat about with other attendees, you are welcome to use that Zoom chat and set the drop down to everyone. On the other hand, if you have questions that you would like to submit for Q&A today, I ask that you please use the Zoom Q&A button instead. It's a small thing, but it helps us track those questions a little bit easier. That way we can manage the volume and follow up with you later via email if we need to. This webinar is recorded, so you'll receive a copy via email in about 24 hours. And finally, in all of your communications today, please remember to be kind and respectful per the Figma Code of Conduct. I see a few hands raised. I would ask that you use that Q&A instead. If you've got a question, drop it in. We'll get back to you quickly there as quickly as we can. So getting started, for any of you who might be new to the Figma ecosystem, or maybe you've been around for a while and thought, wow, there's a lot of new stuff going on lately, welcome, we're glad you're here. Figma is a collaborative design platform that supports you through every stage of the product development process, from idea all the way to shipped product. You are likely most familiar with our flagship product, which is this one right here, Figma Design, where your teams can build out designs and design systems in that visualize phase of the development cycle. But you'll see here that we have a full stack of products now that helps you with the many, many other steps along the way. Today's focus, of course, is going to be right here on Dev Mode. Dev Mode is where we're going to start to move from that visualized design in Figma to a living, breathing artifact in code. Now, before we get into our demo, I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that exist in the development process today. So one of the biggest things that we hear from developers here at Figma is that our Figma design files can often be really difficult to navigate. They're big, they're overwhelming. Typically, the only time they're in there is if they get a link from their designers telling them to go into that file, because it is just overwhelming in there. Next up, we hear a lot about poor communication between teams. So poor communication between development and design can lead to product delays and force developers to have to redo work because sometimes they might be working off of outdated information. And finally, a lack of consistency between teams can also damage your overall product quality over time. If we don't have a single shared source of truth between teams, we find that leads to a lot of redundant work or replicated items that become difficult to maintain over time. Now, taking all of that into account, let's look at what today's handoff process might look and feel like for some of you. It's pretty messy. Designers are often finishing a file, and then they hand it over to the development team. And they might have additional questions, so they set up a touch point meeting. Designs get updated. Devs don't know about it, so they backtrack and do work over again. There's issues in code, so much more. I could go on and on here. But ultimately, what you have is just this constant back and forth. Now, going through that type of process can really delay or limit innovation because your devs can't move as fast as they want to. It's also going to lower your overall efficiency for both designers and developers, and reduce product quality over time if you have folks creating one-off solutions during each of those handoff processes. The other challenge of the development process is that each team needs something a little bit different. What we hear often from our customers is that developers are looking for ways to improve efficiency and actually spend less time in those Figma design files. Our designers are looking for a better way to communicate that doesn't involve setting up multiple meetings and going through back and forth conversations. Product managers are usually trying to oversee the entire development process, and they need a way to track project statuses with better change management along the way. And finally, our design system leads are looking for ways to scale design system adoption and create consistency across teams. Now, the good news is here that Dev Mode can help. Dev Mode is going to help streamline that flow from design to development and improve the development process for everyone involved. And Dev Mode is going to improve your development processes in 3 different ways. First, we can help you make your handoffs more clear and improve the communication between your design and development teams to ultimately help accelerate that development process. Now, for your developers, we can help them quickly find the information they need, either by giving them the information they need right in that design file or feeding that information into an agentic coding solution through our MCP server so they can get back to building. And finally, we help you with scaling that design system usage and adoption and help you bring your code and design libraries together into a single shared source of truth for everyone. Now, even if you don't have a design system in place today, you're still going to see a lot of really powerful functionality as we go through our demo in just a moment. I like this slide because it helps you get a picture of a crawl, walk, run, or even a good, better, best approach to dev mode. Now, if you are in the phase where you are not really leaning into AI too much yet, but you're eager to start building your Figma designs in code and more tightly integrate your design and dev teams, Dev Mode's in-app features that we'll walk through today are going to be an incredibly helpful starting point for you. Now, if you're an organization that's starting to get into some of those agentic coding tools, then adding on the Dev Mode plus our MCP server, I never say that right on the first try, MCP server is going to help you go even further by getting important design context directly to those agents and allowing you to accelerate those AI builds. Finally, the absolute best-in-class implementations of Dev Mode are going to use Dev Mode, that MCP server, and the foundation of a really well-built design system that is aligned between design and code. With all 3 of those things in place, you will see how we can align your teams, accelerate dev with AI, and ensure that the output is both production grade and design system compliant. Exciting stuff there. So with all of that said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into a demo where we can see Dev Mode in action today. I'm going to start by showing you how designers can prepare a file for handoff. Then we'll show you how your developers can easily find what's ready for dev, start inspecting those files, and get to building quickly. Last but certainly not least, we will show you how we enable that design system adoption and accelerate your development cycles by mapping components in Figma to your actual code base and leveraging the Dev Mode MCP server to bring that code into your AI-powered workflows. Let's get started. So let me switch screens over here over into my design file. Right now, I'm going to be in the role of a designer, and I've built this lovely dev recipes site, and I'm ready to go ahead and start sharing this work with my developer team. Now, previously, when something was ready for development, I might have scheduled meetings or slacked my devs and shared a link or sent an email, carrier pigeon, whatever. But now it's super easy to actually identify that a frame is ready for dev. All I have to do is select the frame, and then in the top right corner, click to mark as ready for dev. I know this gets a little small on the screen share, but right here at the top of any frame or component or section, you can mark it as ready for dev. Now, what that's going to do is add a nice visual indicator to your canvas that this work has been sent over to your development team. It's also going to go ahead and notify any of your developers who have access to this file via email, in the Figma app, or through integrations with tools like Slack or Teams if you're running on those platforms. Now, as we navigate around our canvas, we can easily look at the status of the work right here on this page. So anything marked in green is going to be a frame that I have marked as ready for dev. It's in the hands of my development team and they're taking it from there. Anything that is marked in yellow is going to be a frame that was previously sent over to dev, but we've had some changes since the last time. So Figma will pick up on the fact that something in this design has changed, mark it in yellow so that I know to send it back over to my developers when I'm ready. So what I can do here now is go ahead and click again to send it over to devs, and Figma will prompt me to give them a little note if I'd like to about what has changed since last time. So here I'm going to go ahead and write change card layout, done with changes, and now I've sent it over. The final status that you'll see is this gray checkbox here. This is how my developers can let me know on the design side, or if I'm in product management, that the work is done. They've marked this frame as completed and we are ready to go. Now, pro tip, I mentioned that you can mark frames and components as ready for dev. If you have a bunch of things that are all ready for development all at once, you can also use a section to group those on the canvas. So if you didn't see that, it's down here in my toolbar, or Shift S. I can grab a collection of frames that are all ready and send them all over to dev all at once. We're all about those little time-saving efficiency tips here. One more thing that I think is good to call out is that you can mark frames, component sections as ready for dev across all different pages in your file. So depending on how you like to organize your work, you have it here by platform, but there's so many different ways that you could organize things, just a lot of times depending on personal preference. Ultimately, what this means is you can track the status of work across all of these different pages, all in one place, same file, keeping everything in a really convenient location. Now, I have marked my frames as ready for dev. At the absolute bare minimum, I am done with my handoff. I've sent it over to our developers. But there are actually some ways that I, on the design side, can create an even higher quality handoff for my devs as they start to get into this file. So I'm going to show you a couple of tools down here, like measurements and annotations, and of course, good old-fashioned comments in Figma. Let's start with measurements. You'll see these on the canvas already, these little red lines that are on my canvas. A measurement just lets me note a measurement or a spacing detail directly on the canvas. So anywhere where there's something maybe new or significant to call out, I can click and drag and even pull them off to the side if I'd like to keep that canvas really clean. Again, just to create something really easy to see for my devs for any of those details I want to make sure that they don't miss. You can also update those measurements. So for example, if you are wanting to use a slightly different format here, you can click in and change those at any time to make sure that they really ring true to your team's principles and handoff processes. So that's measurements. The other thing that we can add here is annotations. You'll see a few of these on the canvas already. There are these little white bubbles that call out details here. I'm going to go ahead and click down in my toolbar and select annotation. I could also hit Y on my keyboard. And this will allow me to add additional context to my design that might be helpful for my devs and usually is something that they probably can't tell from a static image alone. So for example, maybe I'm going to pull in interaction details here, alignment information, fill, color. We can pull in both just text, anything I'd like to add, or append properties from the components themselves, and they'll be sticky to the design. So for example, I could pull those in and list them out here, add whatever information I'd like. This also allows us to sort our annotations into categories. So I think about often if you have checklists of things that need to be called out or specified as you're going through that handoff process, you can customize these categories for whatever makes sense for your team. But we've got some right here out of the box for you. For example, development details, accessibility notes, interaction, content fill, etc. Now, the nice thing about these annotations as well is they are sticky to the design. So for example, I'm going to go into this one. Let's say I add an annotation here and I want to call out the fill color of this text. Now, if I am still in design mode, I can actually go in and change that fill color. Let's choose this really horrible orange. And you'll see that that annotation updates in real time. So your developers aren't going to be working off of static, outdated information. We're going to keep those really up to date and tied to the design for you. Last but not least, you have your good old-fashioned comments in Figma. If you are newer to Figma, comments, you can hit C on your keyboard or grab them from your toolbar down here. So I can hit C and tag in any of my developers or my design team to start a conversation about these. How do we feel about this layout. I can send it off. The great thing about comments is that it lets us have a persistent conversation here. My team can reply in thread, and these comments will stay visible and tied to the design in design mode, in dev mode, when looking at a prototype, so that everyone always has the latest context wherever they're viewing these designs. Now, pro tip for driving adoption here. You might not need to mark up every single detail of your design, but it is a great idea to sit down between your designs and devs and agree on what's helpful to mark up, what information do they maybe not need, and train your design team on how to build the right annotations and measurements for your design processes. Investing that little bit of time up front in how to really mark up your designs properly is going to be a big driver in cutting down on those back and forth conversations and meetings along the way. Okay, now I have my design marked as ready for dev. I have successfully added all of the annotations that I need to give my devs context. I'm going to switch gears now and jump into the role of a developer. So I am a developer. I have received a notification that there is a new design that is ready for dev. When I jump into Figma, I will toggle over into dev mode. You'll notice I'll switch back and forth again, that all of my sidebars and all of my tools update here because Figma is now giving me a set of tools that are developer focused. Now, as I come into this file, I can see in the left-hand side all of my frames that are ready for development. I can also pan around the canvas if I'd like, but again, knowing that some of these files can be difficult to navigate on the dev side, we can use this feed to quickly click and jump right to the frame that is ready for dev to start taking a look at the information there. Now, while I am here in my canvas view, I can view all those annotations, I can see the measurements, I can also just hover around my design to see any padding details, spacing, if auto layout has applied, tons of information that is surfaced up for you here to get to building quickly in your file. Now, that's one way of inspecting this file. We also have an alternate way of working up here with this Ready for Dev button. Now, if I click on Ready for Dev, what I'm going to get here is a kind of like newsfeed style list of updates about what's ready for dev in this file. So I can scroll through here and see who made changes to the file, when they happened, when things were sent over, all kinds of good information here. I can even see those notes that the team sent over when they clicked what's changed since last time. They'll be surfaced here in the feed. Now from this feed, I can also click to inspect in what we call focus view. So when we go into focus view, what Figma does is removes everything else from the canvas. So provides a really clean, distraction-free place for your devs to start editing this design. Lots of cool stuff that you can inspect here in dev mode. I'm going to show you my favorite though, which is how you can compare changes from this design and see exactly what has changed since last time really, really quickly to accelerate your build. Now, what we can do here, we can see in the right-hand sidebar that we've got our version history. So we'll see all of the different versions of this design over time, but we can also click compare with previous versions to see the most recent one. Here we go. My key was getting a little sticky there. So while this loads, what you're going to see here is a side-by-side of this design. So we've got the previous version that was sent to dev, and we've got our new version that was just sent over now. Side by side, we can see really clearly exactly what has changed in these. Figma will also highlight any of the small changes so you can panel through that list of detailed changes. And you don't have to dig through every detail of this design. We're calling it out here for you really, really clearly. I'll also point out this overlay view, which is probably not as helpful for this particular design, but sometimes when you want to see things here, like on top, right next to each other, then you can see them in this format as well. Okay, moving right along, I'm going to go back over into my canvas and we're going to talk about a couple of other tools that you have in your inspect panel. So we talked about that ready for dev view. I'm back over here in my inspect panel. I can click on a frame and you'll see I've got all kinds of new information that shows up right here in my right-hand sidebar. That's going to help give me the information I need to start building here. I'm going to start by selecting a particular component to show you some of the cool stuff that you can have show up right here in dev mode. So here I have clicked on my dev waffles component. I can zoom in to show you here. And right up top, we're going to see that Figma is going to give me some helpful information like our design specs, details that our designers have included in the library for this component. I can even jump to the main library if I want to see the original where this was published out. And I also have access to all of these developer resources. These are a really great way where you can append links like documentation, Jira issues, GitHub links, Storybook docs. I mean, the possibilities are endless here, but this is information that's going to follow that component around everywhere you use it across Figma so that your devs always have information they need to aid in implementation right at their fingertips. There are also tons of plugins here in dev mode. So you can really take a look at what kinds of tools you're using in your stack. So for things like Jira and GitHub, for example, Storybook, we can go ahead and integrate there to start kind of bringing in some of that information a little bit more efficiently. But back to our panel, we're looking at our component. We can also see right below that we have access to all of the details about how this component has been used in this specific implementation. So we can see the variant, direction, heading, etc. When we click into Explore Component Behavior, we get access to this really great component playground. This is another way that your devs can dive deeper into inspecting this design component by opening up the component in this safe space for exploration, where they can click through and see all of the different permutations of this component. So I can see the different variants, I can see the different Boolean toggles, and really get a good feel for all of the ways that this might show up in different permutations of my design. One other thing that I should mention about dev mode is anytime you are in dev mode, you can't edit the underlying design at all. So it's a totally safe space for your devs to click around and not worry about messing up anything in these carefully crafted designs. Moving on down our list, we're going to talk about this code section in just a moment, but you also get access to any of the variable details that have been used in this design, so you can quickly click in and find all of the information you need from your libraries as well as code syntax. And you also surface up any of the assets in this design that you might need for implementation. So you could export these really quickly here for things like images, icons, GIFs, MP4s. And you can do this individually or in bulk. So it's another great time-saving tool. Another call out I'll make, so you've got all this great information about all of your components. What if your design team strayed from that design system? So here we have an example where our design team has detached that component. Figma's going to call that out for you too, so that you can really clearly see that something has changed here. And ultimately, your design systems team can go in and start a conversation about maybe ways that you need to adjust that system to accommodate for different use cases here. Okay, so we have inspected our file. We've got a lot of good information, and now it's time to start coding. There are a few different ways within dev mode here that you can accelerate the coding process in Figma. Thinking back to that like good, better, best slide, I'm going to show you a few of those options depending on where your team is. So the first thing that I want to talk about is our native code gen. So let me select this detached component here. And you can see that right within Figma, Figma is going to generate some out-of-the-box code snippets for you for CSS, iOS, or Android. We also have tons of those community plugins available for things like Tailwind, Vue, Locify. If you're using a framework that's not supported here out of the box, chances are you can find a plugin that's going to help you get a jump start on important coding details. And again, this is auto-generated. It's not production-ready code, but it's meant to at least give your team a starting off place that'll give them some of those important style details that they can bring into their design even faster. Now, the second option is to use something that we call Code Connect. And Code Connect is going to actually bring your live production code from your design system directly into Figma. And it'll serve that up to your developers right here. So for this component, we are connected through Code Connect, and we can see here that we've got our recommended code. This is pulling in live React code from our code base that we know is tested and vetted and true for your design. Now, Code Connect is a great option if you have a design system that is backed by production code, because again, you know that output is going to be really, really trustworthy. Code Connect today supports React, Swift UI, Jetpack Compose, Angular HTML, Vue, and web components. Now, the effort in actually setting this up can really vary from team to team depending on your design system. But I would say that the consistent through line is that the effort you invest here, mapping your components to your production code base, is really going to pay off in the long term with overall gains in efficiency. And one thing that I hope you'll see is there's really an aha moment here where you jump from, we've got a mapped production code icon into our MCP server where we can actually read that code and bring it into that AI agentic code solution, which we'll go ahead and take a look at right here. Now, first I'll say, if you are unfamiliar with the term MCP server, here is the highest level definition, what you need to know. The dev mode MCP server basically is going to feed design context from your Figma designs into AI agents for code generation. So you can kind of think of it as like an API that translates your designs in Figma into a language that LLMs can understand and read and work with. So the Figma Dev Mode MCP server is currently in beta, open beta. You can access it if you are on any paid plan with a full or a dev seat to jump in and start trying this out right away. It works today with any agentic code solution that supports those MCP servers. So things like VS Code, Claude, Windsurf, there's another one, Cursor. All of those are going to be good options for the MCP server. What this is going to unlock is the ability for your devs to use their preferred AI coding tools, but bring in that context from Figma, or when you've mapped to Code Connect, bring in that live production code to really boost the output of your AI coding agents. So I'm going to show you what this looks like over in the Figma desktop app and Cursor with a demo that I have set up today. So I'm starting by calling out that to use the MCP server, you need to be in the Figma desktop app. So right now I'm in the desktop app and I have our simple design system pulled up. This is a design system that is connected to a production code base through Code Connect. You can see it here in React. And let's say I want to build out this pricing card here. Now, what I can do is select this pricing card in the Figma desktop app. And then I'm going to jump over into Cursor, where I have set up the Figma MCP server. So I have here, I've got an open text file and I have my agentic chat right here in the right-hand sidebar. And what I'm going to do is tell my agent that I want it to create a card using the frame I selected in Figma. I'm telling it where to save that file just to make our demo go smoothly today, and then go ahead and open it in the browser. And I'll go ahead and click send. So what you'll see here is that the agent is going to start thinking, and it's saying, okay, I'm going to help you create a card from your Figma frame. And it's asking me for permission to run that MCP function to get code. Now it's going to call get image, and it's going to start thinking for a second as it's reading that information over in Figma and coming up with a plan for how to create this here in Cursor. I'm going to go ahead and confirm what it wants me to build, and you can see it building out this code here in the sidebar as we go. Now, just to kill a little time here while it thinks, I've chosen a really simple example here for you with a simple card today, but you can kind of imagine the power of this as you start to expand it out to other components in your base. So it's created my file and I just clicked open. I'm going to drag that over from my other screen. And here we go. This is the card that we have made right in Cursor. We can pull up our original design in Figma and you can see it is pretty darn close. So again, super simple example. Where did my frame go? Really simple example, but you can understand how that starts to expand out as you've mapped things throughout your code base and you're getting that really functional aligned code here in AI. We are super excited about the MCP server. There's a webinar coming up that's going to dive into a lot more detail about this. I'll share that with you all towards the end of our presentation if you want to really get into the details. Now coming back over into our demo, I'm going to show you one more thing just to close the loop. And that is the simple action of marking your design as complete once you are done and have brought it to life. So I can go ahead here and click that same status on the dev side, mark it as complete, and you're done. Close the loop, and now we've got that visual signal that everything is ready to go. All right, let's get back over into our slides here as we prepare to wrap up for today. We talked about that back and forth handoff process earlier, and we hope that with dev mode, what you can see is how we change that handoff process so it looks a little bit more like this. We have our designers creating their files in Figma, marking them off in Figma again, and then our developers can really take that file and run with it and go straight into their development processes. All of that is going to be powered by your design systems teams, your design system engineers who've created that shared language that's really fueling that pattern and that motion all the way down through the coding process. Couple of examples for you here from two of our dev mode customers. HP recently told us that they're saving about 85 hours per person per year by not having to constantly switch between different contexts and helping their developers move faster. We also have Crunchyroll, who mentioned that they're saving on average 146 hours per project by using things like annotations and inspections so that their devs can quickly find what they need and get in and out of those design files. Okay, a couple of next steps for you all before we jump into our Q&A. If you are in the camp, you are evaluating dev mode and you'd like to schedule a follow-up session, definitely recommend that you get in touch with your account representatives to access dev mode today. I'm going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat for you. Come on, copy paste. Let me get that here. Boom, there we go. So there is your link. You can quickly get in touch with your account representative and start talking about how this might work for you. Particularly recommend this if you're thinking about things like the MCP server and ways to start working that into your processes. We'd love to have a conversation and talk about what that could do for you. Secondly, highly recommend if you are interested in that MCP and agentic coding that you register for our deep dive webinar that is coming up on July 16th. We're going to have our product managers who built this solution come in and really give a deep dive into this, which is awesome. The last thing that I'm going to call out is for all of you who are already dev mode customers today and are just getting started with rolling this out to your teams. We have this awesome we have this awesome file in our community, the Dev Mode Onboarding Guide, which is going to be a detailed to-do list that walks you through all of the steps of rolling out Dev Mode. I'll preface by saying really easy to set up most aspects of Dev Mode. And then for those things that are a little bit more technical, like Code Connect, we've got great documentation in that guide that's going to walk your team through it step by step. All right. We hope that you saw the power of dev mode today and how it might solve for some of those challenges that your teams are facing. If you don't have any questions, you're welcome to drop. It's been a pleasure being here with you today. But if you'd like to stick around for some Q&A, we've got a little bit of time where we can go through some things together here. So I know the team has been hard at work answering questions in the Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and jump in here to see if there are any that I can help answer live. I see a question from David on, let me click answer live so you all can see the question. If I created a context file for the MCP server, that is a wonderful question. And also if we have any advice. So in this particular example, because it was so simple, no, there was not a context file involved. So it was able to just really quickly read that information, pull in from the production code base, and generate that example. But there is a way that you can add that context file into your IDE, so into Cursor or into VS Code, wherever you're doing this, to create a better quality output. I believe we have those documents or the recommendations documented somewhere. I can look into that for you, David, and see if we can share that in a follow-up email. But just at a high level, I have seen customers do things like put in information about how their variables are named, how their design system is set up, like the different modes there, and how you want to apply certain information that can help, again, even more boost that output of the MCP file. I would also highly recommend that if you don't have Code Connect set up and you just want to give like some general guidelines to the MCP server. I think that our deep dive webinar on the 16th will also cover that in a lot more detail. So hope that's helpful. I see a question about the recording from Dominique. I'll go ahead and answer that one. That's an easy one. You will get a copy of this recording via email in 24 to 48 hours. So we'll send that on over to you so you can watch it again or share with your teams. I see a question from Tia that would be a good one to answer live. From your perspective, what's the main purpose for a PM to use dev mode versus design mode? In the past, my teams have simply used the view mode as PMs. That is an awesome question. I think that the status tracking and that detailed change log in the Figma file is a really helpful tool for your PMs, because instead of having to like ping for updates or ask people to insert status updates in comments or in Jira tickets or whatnot, your PMs can actually just go straight into that file and see all of the version history and the context and the changes themselves. So that ready for dev feed is going to be particularly useful for PMs. And again, just seeing all of those things marked on the canvas is a great use case there for the team. All right, let's see here. Question from Jabali, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Does Code Connect support Ruby on Rails? Out of the box, no, we don't support Ruby on Rails. That's not one of the ones that we have documented. Custom setups of Code Connect are something that you can explore, but might be a little bit more labor intensive to set up. So for that use case in particular, we definitely recommend getting connected to your account representative so we can explore that a little bit more and make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you there. Okay. I see a question from Anonymous. As a company working with an older code base, how might we take advantage of dev mode or other tools to streamline the design to production process? That is a great question. Let me hit answer live. I think that a lot of the functionality that you see here in dev mode is still going to be really relevant for improving your design handoff processes, right? So all of the procedural stuff that can make your team more efficient is still going to apply even if you are not using one of the code frameworks that we talked about today. Let me give you all one other file that I think is really, really cool. I should have mentioned it earlier. We have a playground file that I love, love, love that lets you go in and actually click around in dev mode and get a feel for how all of this functionality works. You can take a little bit of a guided tour as well. So even if you don't have dev mode access, you should be able to access this and play around with the functionality in your Figma account. So, especially if you're thinking that, hey, my code framework is not one that's aligned here, jump in and see if there's something else there that's going to help your team move a little faster. Okay, taking a look here. Are there any app development resources from Figma on processes and procedures for app development using Figma as the design solution? That's a great question. It's also a broad question. If you haven't checked out any of our resources at figma.com/help. Let me make sure I've got that URL right. I never know if it's help or learn. You would think I'd have that information down. Yes, figma.com/help, and also the Figma YouTube channel. You're going to find a lot of stuff there for all different aspects of design, app development, website development. Tons of stuff. So recommend checking that out. And then also, if you're unfamiliar with the Figma community, it's a great place to bounce around questions, discover templates and processes that other people have made. There are so many cool things here where people have outlined their own handoff processes and whatnot that I think could be really useful for you there as you start exploring. Ooh, great question from Johnny here on what is the best practice to manage design versioning. You didn't miss this, but it is also an FAQ that I like to chat about here. Let me kind of jump into my slides. So there are A lot of different ways that you can think about versioning in Figma. And often it can come down to a little bit of personal preference as to how teams like to do this and set things up. Let me jump into a demo file here and show you a few different ways that people do things. One way to think about versioning is that Figma is going to capture these versions for you. So anytime you are editing in a design, I'll go into my design mode here. You can click in to show version history, and we're going to show you everything that has ever changed in this design. So you can go back at any time to click and load up a prior version and restore it if need be. So these will be auto captured, but a lot of times teams also like to click add to version history and give one a title for a really quick snapshot or milestone moment in time. So I can label this as July 10th or add a sprint name or a ticket number or something like that to show it all in the same file. We have other customers who like to use pages to manage versions. So here we have it set up by framework, but oftentimes you might have this set up as, design exploration, V1, V2, and be able to kind of toggle through that work that way. We'll also keep version histories for all of that as well. So you kind of have like version history inception going on there. The other thing that I see teams do often if they are on our org or enterprise plans, so those top two paid plans, is use what we call branching and merging. So if you're not familiar with those terms, I'm sure most of you are in the product development world. Branching and merging essentially lets you create a branch, a separate version of this file that is a safe place for design exploration. So let me go ahead and call this test July 10 in real life. Give that a much better name. Tie it to your sprint, your design exploration, so it's really easy to see. But again, what that does is create this totally separate space where I can come in. It is apart from my main file. We can see we've got this little branch icon here. And that lets me go in and make any changes that I'd like to. Maybe I just want to get rid of that banner image because who knows why. But after I'm done with those changes, and I can use dev mode here as well to collaborate with my team, then I can review and merge these to take a look at any of the changes here in my file, add any collaborators who I'd like to review this, and then finally merge that branch back into the main. So that is another option that people like to use. I would say if you're making like quick little quality of life updates, then just relying on version history is often preferred. But if you're doing larger overhauls, then branching and merging can be a great way to have those clean copies of separate work. Okay. I think we've got most of our questions answered here that we're able to answer today live. Um, Take one more look here. We've got a follow-up here on design versioning. Johnny says, I like the idea of branching and merging, but will it retain the same component as a library is updated? That is a great question. If I'm understanding correctly, you're asking like, if the component is updated in the main library, will it update in the branch as well? I believe the answer to that is yes, Johnny, but I'm going to go ahead and drop in our branching and merging documentation just in case that there's something that you can help out there, kind of get a more definitive answer for you. There we go. Cool. And while we're on branches, great question from Amy on if the whole creative team can work on the branch. Yes, anybody who has access to this can work on it. Let me go back to my main file browser and I'll show you here as well. When you have a branch created, you can see right from the main file that we can toggle between all of those branches. So you can easily see which one you want to jump into and go from there. I see a question in the chat, a follow-up question on design versioning. What would you recommend for a rebrand? Ooh, that's a great question. You could definitely use branching and merging there, but with a project as large as a rebrand, I often see teams wanting to just start totally fresh, right? Especially if you're going to be doing a lot of exploration. Sometimes just going with that brand new file is going to be a less messy way of doing things. It's going to give you the freedom to really explore. There's no wrong answer is the short answer, but I think that's what we see most commonly. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the day. Really appreciate everyone being here. If you have a question in the Q&A that didn't get answered, I will do my best to follow up with you via email within the next couple of days and at least get you some more resources there. But thanks again and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.